Hey guys, it's William again. So my last two videos were about the panelists at the Move On to Wear event forum, and it was pretty in depth. This one's going to be even more in depth. I am probably going to cut it into 3, 4, maybe 5 videos, so I apologize. I'm going to be doing a summary later to kind of sum up all of it and kind of convince you why you should go and watch all of the videos. But now we're going to be talking about the audience questions, which I think is almost even more important than what the panelists had to say, because this is from the people who have worked with the homeless, have been homeless, know homeless people, and have been concerned with the lack of action and just generally they're woke as fuck, if I may say so. And I was really proud to be there, and I was really proud of Denver on Thursday night. And so the first man who's going to speak, I didn't catch his name, but I think he really hits to the core issue. And so let's take a listen.
I couldn't help while smoking a cigarette outside.
Louder!
I couldn't help while smoking outside, listening to you speak, that you specifically said we need to get together out of the silos and talk. And you included me as a business owner, me as a former homeowner, me as a parent, me as a community member, me involved in school boards, but you didn't include we have to get the homeless people.
So this is a great point, and I believe he's speaking directly to Albus Brooks, city council member of Denver. He was speaking earlier about we've got to get together, we've got to create a community, and I believe one of the panelists earlier, Ray, who's been a homeless person before, said, we've been talking about something about homeless people. Well, we haven't been talking with homeless people. We haven't given homeless people a voice of their own. It's time that homeless people start speaking for themselves. And I think that, comes back to the core issue with our representatives, really, in general, especially Albus Brooks, apparently, who later on you'll learn by one of the audience members who is interested in politics, quote unquote, beautiful, that he did sponsor the bill. So the bill that implemented the camping ban. So it comes back to the core issue of not really understanding the problem in the first place. Albus sees people on the street and he thinks the problem is that people are just okay with it. Like, that's as far as he thinks into the issue. But he doesn't think about, why are people homeless? And another man brings this up. I believe it's either Travis Smith, who we're going to get to know very well, or it's another man who kind of looked like him to me. But they brought up the fact that rent is skyrocketing. The reason homelessness is skyrocketing is because rent is skyrocketing. Another person makes the point that rent is skyrocketing because 1% of the financial market owns the rental market in Colorado and probably across the United States. But I don't know the statistics on that. Anyway, let's get moving. So I believe next we're going to be hearing from Albus, his offhand. I don't.
Yes, we need to include the homeless folks.
See, and that's all he says. Yes, we need to include the homeless folks. Why didn't you when you were trying to pass the camping ban? If you're gonna sponsor a bill that affects a group of people, why weren't you talking to them about how it might affect them in the first place? If you knew how it was going to affect them in the first place, you would have never sponsored the bill. If you would have actually been talking to homeless people this whole time, instead of just after you passed a bill that ruined their lives even more, it would have never been passed in the first place. So let's keep listening.
And I have been out here advocating for a year and a half or better. Mine is not really a question because I have asked many questions and got very few satisfied answers. Mine is more of a statement, and whoever wants to take it can take it. The thing is, what we have a problem with is we have gotten too much into trying to make our wallets fat in America on certain occasions. We have lost our sense of compassion toward each other. One thing I would like to say is we got one world. I'm not going nowhere. I have lost and I have gave too much for this country, being a veteran. At the same time, I would just like to say, we need to come together as sisters and brothers and quit looking at how much and what we can gain in order to do the things that we need to do for this city. I love Denver. I'm not from here, but I've been out here 26 years, lower than I was in Anniston, Alabama. But at the same time, I just would like to see us come together, and what the Fed cannot do, the federal government cannot do, we can do it here as a state level, as a city level. That's all I got to say, and God bless each and every one of y'all. Love you. Oh. Some gentleman asked me to say my name again. I guess he'd like the name roll off my tongue. It's Jerry Burton. I'm the one who had that stuff taken away twice. And they will be wasting money on that because I do believe in the U.S. Constitution. I signed up at 17 years old to give my life for this country. I'm crippled now, but I tell you what, if anybody come over here and try to do anything to this country, I'm prepared to give my life still, even though the things I go through. And I love each and every one of y'all for coming out, showing y'all support. You are my brother, you are my sister, regardless of what color you are.
So, as we know, a large portion of the homeless population in America are veterans, which kind of makes the fact that we're so unwilling to do anything about the problem even more inhumane. Because, like this man here, Jerry Burton, signed up at 17 years old to risk his life for this country. Still, now, after being disabled, would still risk his life for this country. Has had his belongings taken away from him twice. What kind of country is it when we are taking away what little people have left because of a camping ban? Because you were tired of looking at homeless people? I think we all really need to have an honest conversation with ourselves. And we'll get into this later because an audience member brings it up. But regardless of policy, of funding, of anything, of policing, we need to look at ourselves and recognize our own bias. Do we cross the street when we see a homeless person? And why do we do that? And we need to be able to forgive each other for the wrongs that we've done if we're ever going to move forward. Let's keep listening.
So there are certain standards for declaring a state of a state of emergency. First the state would have to do that. The city wouldn't do that, and so.
So the question was, why hasn't Denver declared a state of emergency? And context that I don't believe I showed in the last video when the panelists introduced themselves. Albus Brooks, in his introduction speech, said that cities across the nation have been declaring states of emergencies because of the homeless issue. Now, I think that's important because, quoting him, and I'm later going to put up the full videos of the panelists and the audience members so you can watch them independently. He says cities across the nation have been declaring states of emergency. Now, what he's going to say here contradicts that. Ironically, I'm not sure if I'm using the word ironically there, but whatever. Let's hear him out.
Is for Albus.
So there are certain standards for declaring a state of emergency. First, the state would have to do that. The city wouldn't do that, and so.
So right there, the state would do that. The city wouldn't do that. Now, I'm not even going to talk about the reality of what the rules are for whatever the standards are. Him himself said earlier, cities have been declaring a state of emergency. The cities, not the states. In fact, every time I've ever heard of a state of emergency almost, like Detroit, wasn't Detroit in a state of emergency not like for the past 8 years or a decade or so? I'm not saying that I think the homeless problem is so bad that we needed to declare a state of emergency. But I'm again trying to point out the talking out of the side of your mouth, two-sided, two-faced types of things that not just Brooks, obviously he's not the only person like this. We see this across the board with politicians where they say what they feel is most convenient, most politically expedient at the moment. And that's kind of exactly what this whole thing felt like. I mean, I'll talk about it later, but the people who were hosting, and I'm not saying all the panelists, but specifically, Councilmember Brooks and really him, but the people who were hosting it as well, trying to moderate, just seemed generally uncomfortable whenever the audience was speaking. And I think that is something that I need to note because, like I said before, it so rarely happens that because when they say, we want to respect people's time, we invited some panelists to stay after. Obviously not all of them. It's their choice. That's the thing. It's their choice. It's Brooks's choice whether or not he wants to stay after and hear these people out. And the problem is that guaranteed he doesn't choose to stay and hear people out. That's why the people voted to keep having themselves heard out. That's when you ignore people when they're yelling for help. You pass a camping ban, and you finally give them a chance on a microphone in front of people who support them to call you out, and you're not surprised after you almost belittle them. And we can go into this later. I'm gonna play a clip where he says, when he defends the camping ban, which I'll go off on. But what other solutions are we bringing to the table? I haven't seen anything. And then he passes the mic to the Interfaith Alliance minister who says, we had a meeting last week, basically, that we've been bringing solutions to the table. We've been saying this is what we need to do. But then you go and pass the camping ban. Our whole goal of, I believe it's the Colorado Homeless Coalition, is to repeal the camping ban and put in place something that is actually effective. So, and then she goes on to make the point that we're trying to heal the community by repealing the ban. So, let's move on.
My name is Fatima. I have a lot of emotions going through my body right now, but I guess to sum it up, I appreciate that you use the word gentrification. I haven't heard that enough. I also haven't heard the word 5 points, so I'd like to acknowledge that community. But my question would be, a couple weeks ago, I called your office asking the secretary about the lockers. It was mentioned that lockers are being given to people and solutions to giving people storage for their stuff since we don't want it on the streets. However, when I asked how to obtain a locker, where these lockers are, how do people find out about these lockers, I still don't know. And so I was just looking to get more information so that I could relay it to others.
So we have several, and we probably should have done this a little better. We have several advocates, I believe, in the audience, and also we have tables of St. Francis Center, different rescue missions, and things like this. Chris, Connor, I see you in the front. Lockers at both of those facilities, St. Francis Center and different rescue mission.
For rescue mission, I'm uncertain either.
locker capacity and how they're running that program at St. Francis Center. They do provide storage. It's not an individual locker, but it's a room that's staff supervised with bins and allotment in place. But
So you heard the question. I called your office and I asked for the information regarding lockers, and I still don't know. So then he asked someone he thinks knows has the information. And the only information he has is the one facility you mentioned, 50% of the facilities you mentioned, I don't know anything about. The other facility you mentioned only has quote-unquote staff supervised rooms, no individual lockers. So I was going to wait till later to make this point. But you pass a camping ban with the justification that we'll go into later that, oh, the homeless shelters are overflowing with empty beds, which is what they told the media, which is how they justified the camping ban. But in reality, the homeless shelters have been oversaturated. And they also say, oh, well, I know we're confiscating people's stuff, but we're going to put it in a storage facility where they can go and retrieve it later on. Where? In one place in the city? I guess there's only enough homeless people that only one shelter can house their stuff. Oh, and nothing individual. You kind of have to lump all your stuff in with everyone else's. And we're going to have one person watching the entire room. Who the fuck is this person? I don't know them. How do I know they're not going to go through my stuff and everyone else's stuff and steal whatever the fuck they want? If something is stolen, who are they going to call? The cops? Oh, how can you prove that this is yours? Either our government is incompetent and needs to be replaced. Because if they can't even figure out where to store people's stuff when they confiscate it in the middle of winter, or I'm losing my train of thought because I'm so upset about this, because either they are totally incompetent or they are only giving us, what did I write down? Giving us a eye candy piece of policy to shut us up, and they also need to be replaced. So either Albus Brooks is incompetent and can't understand the homelessness problem and how to fix it, or he's only been doing what little he needs to do to keep getting reelected. And that's the fucking problem, people.